We'll speak to Dan Perry, who's an Israeli affairs analyst and the former regional editor of the Associated Press in the Middle East, joining us from Tel Aviv. Thanks for your time. And according to some in the Israeli media, the proposal was delivered to Israel without prior coordination, and Israeli officials reacted with alarm. One official saying accepting it is in effect surrender to Hamas. So, Dan Perry, my question is, does this then explain the conflicting reports we're getting and retractions? Is Israel trying to sabotage this latest proposal?
I think Israel doesn't want to accept any framework that involves American guarantees for an end to the war, because we remain where we have been tragically for 19 months now, which is that Hamas refuses to hand over all the hostages without being allowed to remain in power in Gaza, essentially, despite some reports to the contrary. That's how it's perceived. Whereas Israel refuses to end the war without Hamas being gone. Now, the Witkoff framework, as far as I understand it, basically is another interim agreement where Israel gets back part of the hostages and doesn't really commit to an end to the war. They're prepared for that. And the outstanding issue is that Hamas, even when they suggest that they accept such a thing, it seemed to be continuing to demand, in fact, a guarantee to end the war. So I don't see evidence, despite the conflicting reports and despite the multiplicity of proposals that are out there, including one delivered by Hamas through a Palestinian-American businessman named Bahbah. I don't see evidence of a breakthrough, despite some occasional optimism being aired from all sides.
Are you saying that Israel just simply does not want to end the war?
Israel doesn't want to end the war without a guarantee that Hamas is gone, not just gone from power, but disarmed. And that, that's the government's position. In Israeli society, I think there's probably still a majority for people willing to end the war right now in exchange for all the hostages and just sort of suffice with what has been accomplished. I think to change this, you would need radical pressure from all sides on both Israel and Hamas, on Hamas to indeed disarm and not insist on remaining either in power or as a sort of Hezbollah-like entity actually controlling whatever civilian government is installed, and on Israel to accept that it will not occupy Gaza and that it will withdraw in favor of a reformed version of the Palestinian Authority. Now, that is something that the Israeli opposition and the Israeli majority undoubtedly would support. This government is not. And I think we would need A, clever diplomacy, and B, sustained pressure on both Hamas and on Israel to do these things.
The question is whether Trump himself will force a deal over Netanyahu's objections. How likely is that?
Only a fool would predict Trump. I do sense that Trump wants the war to end, and he basically gave Israel carte blanche to walk away from the agreement with two tools in its arsenal. One, that it could withhold humanitarian aid because Trump doesn't much care about the consequences of that, and B, that it can ratchet up the military pressure despite damage to civilians, the so-called gates of hell scenario. Now, he did that, and it's been now over a month or two, and nothing has really changed on the ground. It doesn't appear to be going towards an end of the war, but rather a forever war that preserves Netanyahu's coalition, because the far right that controls this coalition demands that. I don't think Trump is down with that. I suspect he's running out of pressure, running out of patience, rather, and therefore it wouldn't surprise me terribly to see Trump insist, in effect, on an end to the war, even though that might bring down Netanyahu's government. A deadline of sorts, and this is weird and horrible, is the end of July, when the Knesset goes on its summer recess, which means that Netanyahu can agree to an end to the war without the Knesset being able to bring him down for like 2 or 3 months. If it turns out that at that point he agrees, that will suggest that the war has been delayed for that purpose, or rather the end of the war has been delayed, and that would be quite disgraceful, but I don't put it past.
All right, Dan Perry, thank you for joining us from Tel Aviv.